Hey everyone, this is Andrew, and in this video I'm going to give you my review of the Sound Design Bundle by Krotos Audio. So if you've never heard of Krotos Audio, I have covered their products on my channel before a couple times, and this is their bundle that includes all three of the products that I've included thus far. So there's the Dehumaniser 2, which is kind of a sound design tool for the voice that can create studio quality monster and creature sounds in real time. There's Weaponiser Fully Loaded, which is a massive database of weapon samples that are integrated into this very cool plugin that allow you to mix and mangle them to create your own weapon sounds that never existed before. There's Reformer Pro, which again is kind of like a big library of sound effects, except it's also a tool that's used to trigger those sound effects based on an audio input, kind of using an envelope following type of thing. So just from those descriptions, you can kind of see that this library is definitely suited towards the sound designer. These aren't necessarily effects plugins or necessarily mixing or mastering plugins. These are sound design plugins, and even more detail, they're kind of focused at the film world or an audio person working in the film industry. So if you were recording someone and you needed them to sound like a demon, you're going to use Dehumaniser 2. And if you have a scene in your film with guns, Weaponiser is a great option because you can create your own gun sounds or just use one of the dozens, or I forget how many presets there are. And Reformer Pro would be used if, let's say, you have the sound of someone making footsteps on the ground, and then in post you're adding different elements on the ground that they're stepping on. And you can load Reformer Pro with maybe like a squishy sound, and then every time the footstep makes a noise, it'll automatically trigger that squishy sound. Or another example would be if you have someone like yelling and you recorded it live, so the person's just yelling in real life. Maybe you want to have it so that their yell triggers the sound of a lion roaring, or maybe 4 lions roaring at different pitches. That's the kind of thing you can do with Reformer Pro. Instead of, in the past, you would have to overlay all those samples and do all that work manually. Reformer Pro just takes care of the hard work for you. So first, I think we'll dive into Dehumaniser 2, since that is the plugin that I first covered. And I think it's my favorite out of the bundle because for me as a vocalist, it gives me the most kind of good times. I'm not really involved in the film world, and the Weaponiser and Reformer are a little more suited for that. They do have their uses in regular old music, but it is less so than Dehumaniser, which you can definitely use in music. So as I mentioned at the beginning, Dehumaniser 2 is a vocal processing tool to create monster sounds and goblin sounds and robot sounds. And the way it works is that there's all these little modules that you can connect. So inside of the plugin, there's actually a routing system. And there's things like pitch shifting and ring modulation and flanging, and you can even trigger a sample convolution, and a couple other features that are included. And this gives you a lot of tools that would originally have to be done in, let's say, like 10 plugins. So if I wanted to create a monster sound before Dehumaniser 2, I would get my voice and I might make a copy of it. And on the second copy, I might throw on Little Altar Boy and bring down the pitch by an octave and bring down the formant by something. And then I might make another copy and change that value again. And I might put different amounts of reverb in each one, mix them on panning and mix them in volume. Some of them might have delay as well. Some of them might even be reversed. Some of them might be up in pitch. But either way, it takes multi-tracks and it takes a bunch of different plugins, whereas Dehumaniser simplifies that a lot. And the cool thing is there's over 100 presets. And the presets are pretty good. In my first video on Krotos, which was my video on Dehumaniser, I just kind of played around with the presets. I did a little bit of my own, but I also mainly played around with the presets in that video. And you can tell I'm just having a blast, just kind of talking and trying to make goblin noises and stuff and monster sounds. So the presets are very good if you need to record a monster sound or a goblin sound that just has to be generic. Those presets will work very well. And then if you need to create a custom sound, the flexibility is definitely there. The plugin is very deep. Playing with it for the period of time that I did in that video, and then for the period of time before and after, didn't get me anywhere near to the level where I felt like I was fluent in using the plugin. I had to consult the manual for some things to make sure I was actually doing things right. Which, on one hand, you might say that, in the past for a lot of plugins, I'll say, one of the good signs of a good UI design is that you don't have to consult the manual. You can just figure it out. This is kind of different, and there's other cases where it's different. You know, for something deep, you expect to have to consult a manual at some point. You know, for example, if you're in the 3D modeling world, either an engineer or an art, you don't expect to be able to just pick up Blender without watching a video or manual. You don't expect to be able to just learn Professional Engineer or SolidWorks without consulting a manual or watching any videos. You know, the deeper the software gets, the more you expect having to do that. So, anyways, I think that's it for Dehumaniser. I think it's an absolutely incredible plugin. It's a complete game changer for creating monster sounds or just demonic sounds on vocals. So next up is Weaponiser Fully Loaded, and as I mentioned before, this is kind of a massive library of weapon sounds that are integrated into this very cool plugin that allows you to mix and mangle the sounds to create your own gun sound. The presets alone are very good. If you had some footage where you needed to add some gun sounds to it, I would say it'd be very simple to just drag your video clip into your DAW and then just start recording different gun sounds over the footage and then drag it so that it lines up with the footage very nicely. And then at that point you can export it and actually bring it into your something like Premiere Pro or After Effects or whatever, whichever way you do that with video. Now if you're doing it with music, the presets are also great because chances are you're not going to be too particular on the type of gun. Weaponiser gets very specific, like it tells you that you're firing like an AK-47 or a Dragunov sniper rifle. As someone working in music, you probably don't necessarily care. You just want something that sounds like a gun right before you go into your breakdown. So, you know, the presets are very good for that. Now, if you want to get in and do some sound design, you can do really cool things. It was very cool for ambient sounds because they also have the sounds of the shells falling out and hitting the ground and stuff. So those sound effects are very cool. Get those, slow them down in time, and then put a bunch of reverb on. You have a pretty neat special effects thing. There is a whole section of sounds that are for like drums, percussion. There's like explosive sounds as well. So it's not necessarily just gunshots. It's just weapons, and not necessarily even weapons, but things that can be done with the sounds of weapons. So very cool software. If you're not into film whatsoever, then it's probably not the thing you're looking for. It's, you know, as I'm saying, it's an incredibly cool plugin, but if the target market really is someone who needs great gun sounds in their footage or in their music, chances are you don't need like incredible gunshot sounds in your music. You might just be happy, you know, going on Splice, paying $12 for whatever, a month of Splice, and then just finding a bunch of gunshot sounds, and that's probably good enough for you. But if you actually need to line gunshot sounds to footage, this is like an insanely powerful tool. So, you know, sound designers for movies out there, I'm sure you already know about this, but if you don't, check it out. So lastly, we have Reformer Pro, which is kind of the weird one of the bunch. It's a very unique plugin. It's a very cool plugin that I think it's probably more suited towards the film people in the audience, but again, you can definitely use it in your music. And this one I think you can use in your music more so than Weaponiser. The way that it works is that it provides you with a big library of Foley sounds. And when I say Foley, I mean, you know, it might be the sound of someone squishing fruit. It might be the sound of someone rubbing leather on stuff. It might be a bunch of electronic bleep bloop sounds. It might be the sound of animals roaring. And they recorded those very well. And what this plugin does is it's kind of like an envelope follower. And if you don't know what an envelope follower is, basically, if you had a microphone and you recorded yourself saying a word, and you put Reformer on, every time you said a word, it would activate the sound. So basically it listens to an audio source and it follows the envelope or the volume of that sound source, and that determines what triggers the sounds in Reformer Pro. So it's very easy to make a roar sound yourself, just going rawr, and then put Reformer Pro on, and put a bunch of different lion roars on top of it, and then when you do it, it'll be like, this huge like roar kind of thing. And some cool applications of that is not all of these sounds are necessarily so filmy or so particular. So it comes with this bundle of sounds called the Krotos Bundle, which is about 4 gigabytes of sounds at 96 kilohertz. And it includes roars of tigers and leopards. It has electronic sounds, leather, fruit and vegetable sounds. There's crunch, squash, stabs, polystyrene, gun foley, sizzle. And that is just the sounds that come with the Krotos Bundle. There is also sounds that are just built into Reformer Pro, I believe, because I remember seeing more than just those sounds. But either way, it's pretty cool to get whatever element you have in your song and load up, let's say, the electronic sounds, which might, there's a bunch of glitches and bleep bloop sounds and stuff, and you can actually get your samples and morph between them, and you can have 4 different samples kind of in an XY pad. You can make all of them different speeds. You can make all of them different pitches, and you can apply effects to them. Now, the cool thing is, let's say you have this ambient pad in the background, or maybe you have a drum in the background. You can trigger Reformer off of whatever element you want, and then just put a bunch of reverb on it, and all of a sudden you have this very strange organic pad that's triggered off of the elements in your music. So it's just adding all these extra Foley elements, and this would be insane to program manually. You'd be dragging all these samples in, and you'd be morphing them and stretching them, and then you'd have to line them up over whatever element in your song you're trying to trigger them from. So Reformer Pro does a lot of jobs at once. Even outside of the film application, where you might want to get the sound of a human, roaring and actually make it sound like a real roar for your movie, this is a legitimate application of it where it's pretty cool. And it might be the case where you want to record some sounds yourself with Reformer, so you might load in a bunch of sounds in the XY pad, and then you'll hit record on your song while holding a microphone and just start humming into the microphone to trigger these sounds. So you can live improvise your sound effect design in your song, which again is a pretty cool thing, because that's something that would be pretty hard to do organically. You can't really organically just load in sounds and play them like that. Like you can put them in a sampler, or you can put them on a drum rack in Ableton, but it's not the same thing, because you're not organically changing the volume, fading them in, fading them out, like with your voice the way you can with Reformer Pro. So anyways, that's Reformer Pro. So that's all 3 products in the Sound Design Bundle. Krotos has recently come out with the Sound Design Bundle 2, which has everything that the Sound Design Bundle has, plus some extra stuff. So it has Igniter Full Tank, which Igniter is their new, it's kind of like Weaponiser, except applied to vehicles, so it's ridiculous. It's got so much stuff. There's the Battle Bundle, which is an expansion pack kind of for Weaponiser Fully Loaded. Has a bunch of other combat sounds that aren't guns, they're actually swords and etc. from that era. And then the Sound Design Bundle also has Dehumanizer 2, Weaponiser, and Reformer. So that one runs about $19 or about $2,000 now. Sound Design Bundle 1 runs about $1,000. So the difference really is Igniter, which is about a $1,000 product. Or Igniter Full Tank is. So either way, I have Sound Design Bundle 1, and I think it's incredible. It definitely is an expensive product. It's $1,000 on sale, but you're getting what I would consider to be world-class sound design tools that will take you pretty far. Right now I don't work on film stuff. I'm focusing on music stuff, and I do have times where I'm making YouTube videos and I want to put a weird sound effect in, but most of the time I'm just working on music. But it's nice to know that not only can I use some of these obscure sounds in Weaponiser or Reformer in my music, but in the future, if I get some kind of project where I need to put a gunshot in some film, whatever it is, YouTube video, or a friend of mine who's actually working on some kind of more legitimate film project, whatever it is, I have those tools. So, either way, I think they're incredible products. Dehumanizer 2 is a complete game changer for vocals, and I don't think that anyone else has anything that even competes with that. So So anyways, my total score, I think it has to be a 5 out of 5. It's definitely not for everyone, but in terms of quality, everything is top notch. Nothing froze on me and did weird things. Like, I think I got one weird glitch when opening the plugin because it couldn't save a default thing, and that wasn't remotely annoying at all, so it's not an issue. All the plugins were easy to use. Some of them were pretty deep and I had to consult the manual, but for the most part, everything just works. The raw sounds that are integrated in Weaponiser and Reformer are top notch. Like, they stand on their own. If you were looking for great Foley sounds, you could buy the Krotos sound design packs and not even use Reformer, because they're just great Foley sounds. And yeah, I mean, it's great. So if you think it's something that you could benefit from, you know, that's what I think about it. I definitely think you should go check it out, at least if you haven't already, and just, you know, see if you like one or all of the products. These products are all available separately, and some of them actually have lighter versions if you're just kind of interested. For Dehumanizer, there is actually a simple beasts or creatures or something version that's a lot cheaper. There's Weaponiser Basic, which is cheaper and has less sounds, and then Reformer has a regular version as well. And I think they even have a free version if you have purchased their libraries, and, you know, their actual sound libraries. So yeah, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. Don't forget to subscribe for more. I upload videos every single Tuesday and Friday, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.
Who do you think you are, coming into my land to take my pie? Big guy. Oh yeah. Look at my biceps. They're really big.
Involved honor dialogue. Involved honor dialogue.